Hi, I'm Jim Jenner. If you've seen our films before, you know I'm a lifelong pigeon fancier and a filmmaker. And over the last 2 decades, our company, PacCom Films, has introduced you to some of the most interesting people in the world of pigeons, all over the globe. Now, here's one of my favorites, a Flying Dutchman, Odd Schaerlaeckins. We first introduced you to Odd in our 5-hour series, Share the Blue Sky, where he spent time talking about the incredible Jansen pigeon family. He was also one of the world's favorite champions in our Secret of Champions series. I've always enjoyed spending time with Odd and hearing his unique perspective on pigeon racing. And we thought maybe it's time to give this man the stage to himself. So here you are, nothing but 100% one of the greatest pigeon fanciers in the world, Odd Schaerlaeckins. Odd was born in the Netherlands in 1952. And like most little boys growing up in post-war Holland, he was the son, grandson, great-grandson, nephew, and cousin of pigeon fanciers. But even at a young age, Odd Schaerlaeckins wasn't just any pigeon fancier. He started winning races when he was still in his teens. Like many fanciers, he stepped away from the sport for a few years to start a family and become a teacher. But by the time he moved to the small town of Barl-Nassa on the border, Odd Schaerlaeckins was again back in his lofts, cultivating a career that would span decades and make him a world-renowned pigeon racing champion. On top of what will become an impressive record as a fancier, Odd is also an accomplished writer. For years, he's penned books and articles about the sport he loves and the people who've made it their passion. Among his first and most famous works is a book about the Jansens, Belgium's premier pigeon breeding family. Now, Odd's success as a writer and as a fancier has drawn fans from all over the world who seek him out for his expertise and advice, as well as to buy his famous pigeons. For this film, Odd was kind enough to sit down and share his vast knowledge and experience with us in a series of rare interviews conducted over 3 days. With his characteristic straight talk and good humor, Odd speaks at length about his views on pigeon breeding, loft management, feeding, medicine, and racing. You'll also hear him talk about how the power of observation can make a good fancier into a great one, and how he believes living a balanced life is one of the keys to his success. Now, Odd Schaerlaeckins' experiences in pigeon racing are almost without equal. He's won huge races. He's bred pigeons that have won all over the world. But most of all, he's written observations that really are unique, thought-provoking. I know you're going to enjoy hearing his thoughts. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about the region where Odd and thousands of others race pigeons in Northern Europe. I flew to Holland to meet Odd in early June 2009, during the height of the European old bird season. Now, Barl-Nassa sits right on the border between Belgium and the Netherlands. Holland, as it's called, is a flat little nation in the northwest corner of the continent, where the little Dutch boy put his finger in the dike to keep out the North Sea. But that was a few years ago. Now, over 60% of the folks in this prosperous nation live below sea level, on fertile land reclaimed by enormous dikes that would make New Orleans envious. Now, I know you're not here for a geography lesson, but having some idea of the flat terrain might help you better understand the conditions here that fanciers like Odd put their birds through. And to put the situation in perspective, you could put 100 Netherlands in the United States and still have room for about 50 Belgians. The two little countries are less than a third the size of the UK, with only about half the population. And within this green, flat, geographical postage stamp on the planet thrives a lively but friendly Dutch-Belgian rivalry over who has the better pigeons. It was about 150 years ago when the railroad came along that the hobby of pigeon racing exploded here, and since then there's been a lively debate over which of these tiny countries has the best birds for the marathon in the sky. Obviously, the pigeons have no concept of country, they just do their job, flying home from release points in France to the south. But the two countries organize their pigeon races differently, which makes it hard to actually know which nation's birds are the best. Without getting into too much detail, the simplest way to put it is the Belgians tend to divide their races into divisions for cocks and hens, yearlings and old birds. In the Netherlands, the tendency is to have giant winner-take-all competitions that yield entries of tens of thousands of birds. And it was one of those enormous races where young Odd Schaerlaeckins made his name as a champion pigeon fancier. For many, many years, a 400-mile youngbird race that began in the French city of Orleans was literally the central moment in the hobby. It was competition so vast that it was followed not just by the pigeon fraternity, but by the entire country itself. 30 years ago, when he was 27 years old, Odd Schaerlaeckins won Orleans. That was 1979. He won again in 1985. He won again in 1996. And over the years had many times with birds in the top 10 nationally. Odd Schaerlaeckins' birds bested tens of thousands of other pigeons, and the local media dubbed him the King of Orleans, a title he's still known by today. But by the year 2000, intense pressure from animal rights activists led to the demise of the Orleans youngbird race. But by then, Odd had already secured his place among the elites of European pigeon racing. For this documentary, I met with Odd at his home in Barl-Nassa, which is literally, as I said, on the Belgian-Netherlands border.
This girl is lonely.
It's here that Odd tends to his old bird lofts, and he also has partners to the south in Belgium where he races his young birds. And for such a renowned fancier, he maintains a surprisingly simple operation, as you shall see. Our long conversation begins where all good stories start, at the beginning.